Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. With us now, returning to the program, always a pleasure, Jeet Heer, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation. Jeet is in a remote, secret location, as you can see. Maybe
let me just say that I have both Dick Cheney and the bones of Al Capone, or perhaps Al Capone and the bones of Dick Cheney. I cannot verify.
Wow, we couldn't verify your whereabouts yesterday or Sam's when Lou Dobbs croaked. So this is kind of a theme here. Where
no, Bob Newhart, Lou Dobbs, all the Giants.
You're busy over there at the Nation.
I was trying to revive Newhart. That's why I wasn't available. Matt, just turn that monitor. Turn the far one. Oh, you can see. Okay. All right. So, Jeet, we got a lot to talk about. Let's start with the RNC.
I think this is a slow news week. I don't know if you want to talk about movies, TV shows.
The assassination attempt of Trump is old news now. By this point, it's like okay.
I mean, I don't know that there's really that much to talk about in terms of the assassination attempt, except in the context of how it was used last night, but also in the fact that we still have not seen a medical report on what happened. Now, I'm not suggesting any type of conspiracy here, but it's odd because you would expect, the doctors said I was that the bullet that ripped through my ear could have caused some type of it's a little bit less dramatic than you would have anticipated had that, but be that as it may. There was still an assassination attempt. Somebody died. 2 other people were,
no.
hurt. But
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, despite the fact that there were these 2 deaths, and I believe 2 other people were in critical condition. It's been basically turned into like a convention gimmick. Do you remember the flip-flops that Republicans wore during when John Kerry was nominated? They wanted to mock him as a flip-flop.
And the purple bandage.
The purple bandage, with the bandage, Now they have like these little band-aids. I mean, like it's kind of astonishing. Because I actually do think like Trump actually was almost assassinated. Like if it's just like my understanding is of just an inch difference, we'd be having a very different conversation. But like such is the nature of Trump and his party that they basically turned it into a merchandising thing. You can get T-shirts of Trump raising his fist. You have the slogan "Fight, fight, fight," and somebody's making a hell of a lot of money off of band-aids.
Yeah, I really wish I had the ambition to get in on that type of merchandise.
The shirts were up immediately.
But all right,
let me just say that I've invested my entire family fortune on coconuts, so I need the news to go a certain way. But
you and me both here, Jeet.
All right, before we get to that, because I do want to get to that. What was your sense of the RNC? Because this was. I mean, after I was in like a haze last night after we stopped coverage, which incidentally we stopped before he stopped talking. Yeah. I mean, aside from the speech being a complete rambling mess, it was an incredibly bizarre. And we only did live coverage of nights 3 and 4. I watched night 2. And it was different than any other one I've ever seen. Like, we had moments in the past where you had Clint Eastwood and that was bizarre, but it stood out because it was bizarre within the context of it. The whole feel of this convention was utterly bizarre to me. And it was, I mean,
I want to
not just there's more almost like cultural critique here than political.
Well, I mean, Trump is a cultural phenomenon even more than a political one. But I think that one of the interesting things is like previous conventions are like party conventions. So you honor the great members of the party, Mitt Romney, John McCain, not going to do that. You honor the great heroes of the party, we're the party of Lincoln, of Teddy Roosevelt, of Eisenhower. You didn't really see a lot of that. This is a party without a past. And without any other like prominent members, this is a party of Trump. It's like what made it unique is that it was just like 4 days of Trump, and various approaches to Trump. Like there are different factions of Trumpism now that want to claim different sides of him. But like that is kind of unique. Like usually political conventions are about unifying the party, but both around a candidate, but also giving a sense of party identity. The only party identity the Republicans now have is Trumpism.
Yeah, I think that describes it fairly well. Like I was struck by the fact that Trump was there for a couple of nights in sort of like a luxury box, and it had that feel of like when you watch these movies about Caesar and the Colosseum, and everyone coming to pay homage to Caesar or the king or something. It was weird. It was weird.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of interesting, like which of the ones he was like, there are certain points like Hulk Hogan and more of the entertaining type people that he was very excited by. And there are other people, like I have to say JD Vance, where Trump was kind of falling asleep. So like Caesar both needs his rest and his entertainment.
Yeah.
There was a quality, like when you saw his reaction to Hulk Hogan versus there was a quality of like, what is it like when the princess would throw out her napkin onto the field,
a favor for
the knight would ride over and hand her the thing or something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I mean just like the whole entertainmentization. There's this other person, I forget her name now, but she's like coming out of, I think, sort of influencer rap world or whatever, and Trump was very
Amber
excited.
Rose.
Amber Rose.
Trump was very excited by her and Hulk Hogan. Less excited, I would say, by the Republican politicians advocating for the policies that Trump is supposedly going to have.
Well, that was the thing too. I went back and I looked at like the list of speakers, and there was almost sort of a reversal in terms of where those people went this time, even from like 2016. Like this was more 2016 than 2020 in some respects, but it was almost a reversal of where the sort of celebrity stuff people were loaded up. Like he had Fran Tarkenton in 2016, who was a football player, and people were like, a football player, but now it was just all wrestling, which is interesting because that's completely kayfabe. But there were no sort of like like you say, no party dignitaries. This was like a timeless convention that seemed completely distinct from any notion of republicanism.
Well,
I don't even think you ever heard
that?
like we're the party of Lincoln. You never even heard that there, and none of that.
Or the fact that none of the former presidential nominees for the Republicans were there. Mitt Romney wasn't there. Bush wasn't there. John McCain wasn't there either. But if you're not somebody who has bent the knee to Trump, you basically didn't show. They didn't even want you there. There's no like Republican dignity. Could you imagine if Hillary Clinton or Obama didn't show up to the DNC or make some sort of gesture towards it? It would be a huge story.
Yeah, the complete absence of the Bush family is also sort of, I think, worth noting. I mean, I mean, maybe they were there, but they were completely submerged.
Well, there are Bushes who have sort of bent the knee to Trump, but I think, and this is perhaps one of the few good things I'll say about Trump. He has complete contempt for the Bushes, and does not want them in his party. Except occasionally to kiss his ring. So of course, no. I mean, it really, they've narrowed down the party to Trump, and it makes me think what's going to happen when Trump's not there anymore. Like it's the party has become this hollowed out, empty vacuum.
Let's talk about that, because JD Vance is an interesting a figure here.
Out.
Well, the thing is that I think he provides a sort of a fresh sort of like target to campaign against, but also in my mind, he scares me more than any of the other potential picks that are out there, and it's basically because of Peter Thiel. Because, Bannon once said, I think about 6 to 8 months ago, maybe it was a year ago, Steve Bannon was saying, like, we don't need Trump for Trumpism. That he's just the first guy through the door. And with JD Vance and all that Peter Thiel money, and all that crypto money, and Jeet, and Peter Thiel's ideology probably as well as many, as any, I should say. These are real hardcore authoritarian Straussians who really believe that they have a real ideological basis for why they should be, dictators, essentially. And there's a quality of like Donald Trump could be the appetizer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, there's a couple of things to say about that. I think, like, in the wake of Trump, there was an attempt to do Trumpism without Trump, and have. But it's interesting that has largely been unsuccessful. Like usually candidates who like have the Trump message but aren't Trump. Like you can mention Kerry Lake, Blake Masters, who also got Peter Thiel money. DeSantis, Oz. Like they've all like kind of fizzled out. Now, Vance, there's two things. The Thiel money did help him get the nomination in Ohio, and once you got the nomination, I mean, Ohio's a pretty red state. It's very hard for anyone not named Sherrod Brown to like win in Ohio. And actually, Vance underperformed. He has the same problem of all the Trumpists without Trump. He actually underperformed what a Republican would normally do. So I don't necessarily know if he's like such a great like politician, but I do think he is exactly a great networker. He is part of that Thiel network, and he is the way in which the Thiel network combined with Project 2025 will try to remake American government. And it is like, the vision is essentially it's a Nietzschean Ubermensch vision. There's a few people who know how the world works. They should be in charge. Thiel has basically said, American democracy as a vehicle for my type of politics ran into trouble in once women got the vote.
That's almost like an explicit. That's almost a word for word quote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Our vision of liberty, is it became obsolete once the franchise was expanded. Now, and it's hard to explain how much. I mean, Vance is a total chameleon, silly putty candidate who has like always tried to emulate who's around them. So when he was at Yale, he did that sort of moderate Republican, never Trumpist thing, and then now he's around Thiel, and he's like so much a Thielite. Thiel is a great fan of this very conservative philosopher René Girard, who's actually a very interesting theorist who has like these ideas of sacrificial victims and mimetic imitation. But Girard was a strong advocate of Catholicism, and Thiel got Vance to read Girard, and then Vance converted to Catholicism. So basically, you have someone whose like whole religious identity is based on his friendship with Peter Thiel, which is like kind of an amazing thing. Who's could be the vice president of the United States, could be president of the United States. Like that.
Yeah.
And
go ahead. No, there's this strand now in the Republican Party of this like Catholic.
Well, it's been there for a long time. The Opus Dei stuff has been there for a long time.
But it feels resurgent in this way that they have a representative in Josh Hawley. Leonard Leo is is leading this movement in terms of funding it, and he's a super donor or like whatever Clarence Thomas's buddy, I guess. So, I mean, there is actual, I think, big money behind it. And if Thiel is endorsing that and Vance is endorsing it as well, that's a strand of theocrat that's a little bit different than what we've seen in terms of like the Mike Pence evangelical side of things.
Oh, absolutely. And that's interesting because usually the Republican formula since the 70s has been that the evangelicals get the votes, they're in Congress, they run for president, and the hardcore Catholic theocrats. We're not talking about, your neighborhood nun or priest here, or, your uncle who goes to church. We're talking about people who have this very specific form of Catholicism that sees theocracy as a goal. You hid those people, kept them only for the judges. These are the people you put on the Supreme Court because you cannot win on that in America. And with J.D. Vance, I think they've decided, like, let's try to see if we can win on that in America. Let's see if we can not just control the Supreme Court, but then also have this same, Alito, Clarence Thomas, Amy Barrett Coney vision of the world, like in the White House as well. That is a remarkable change because usually, like, they keep the presidency for the evangelical Protestants.
Right. It was all Bob Novak and Alito at the time. And Kudlow, I think too, actually. But what I think is really sort of, this moment, and you touched on this, and I think this is the point, the takeaway for Vance is that the Trump part of Trumpism was really sort of the show, like how do you get to this point? But Project 2025 and billionaire money is how you sort of lock it in structurally, and you don't need that type of showman at the top of the ticket to get to where you want to get to where Peter Thiel wants to get to. Like Trump is the sort of like, the key that opens the door. But once you get in there, once you're in the room, essentially they're going to do the remodeling that's going to make it possible that door no longer needs a Donald Trump to be opened.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah, and I mean, it's also, you see that with the sort of changes, some of the changes that the courts have made, the sort of great expansion of presidential power. Basically presidential impunity, like almost nearly absolute for whatever can be considered an official act. Like imagine that with like Trump and Vance in the White House. Imagine like the sort of overturning of the administrative state, the purging of the independent civil service. I mean, I think it is. And then I go back to that Thiel quote, right? Like, democracy is the great problem. But there are ways that you can overcome democracy in the American system. And I think that they have found their pathway.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And that terrifying notion is a perfect predicate for the next conversation that we're going to have about Joe Biden and the impetus to have him step down as the presumptive nominee. Last night, AOC did an hour-long Instagram stream sort of outlining where she's been on this. And you wrote about this in terms of like the progressives. I want to put that aside for a second, but that to me is one of the most interesting elements of this. But let's talk about the what's happening with Biden. It appears, and maybe part of it is being made to have us believe that it appears to be, because this is the way that people like this get jammed, that he is in the sort of like has passed through the denial stage and is in now the sort of like what are the conditions stage for me to step down. Just give me your sense of where we're at and what he's going to do now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can even see it in, I don't think it's too much, it's not just based on pure speculation. You can see it in Biden's own rhetoric. Previously he said, only the Lord Almighty could convince me to step down. And more recently he's had this proviso, well, if a medical doctor told me, like it was necessary to step down, or, if polling showed that I absolutely have no chance to win, then I would do it. But saying like, but those things haven't happened. But those things could very easily happen. Like it's not a huge stretch to imagine. I could find you a doctor in 10 minutes. I could speak to Joe Biden and tell him, like Joe, you got to take it easy, for your own health. I don't think it's that difficult to find the a proper doctor. In fact, I think it's more shocking that they find doctors who tell them to stay in. Nor is it that difficult. He has a lot of bad polling. I mean, this is one of the things, even before that debate performance, one of the things that really worried me in the last year was like I saw how the White House was using polling, and they were like using it like a losing campaign, which is that they were constantly like denying the polling, cherry picking polls, and there still seem to be doing that. I mean, like, it seems like with the Pelosi visit, Pelosi went to him and said, like, Joe, like you're going to lose this, and Biden was very defensive and said, no, I have polls that show it's still very close. And then Pelosi, being Pelosi, and I'm glad that she was in there, right? Because she demanded to see the polling. She demanded that he get the advisor on the phone who's been giving him the polling. And, like she can run through the polling better than anyone. So the two conditions that he's saying, like, are very, I think they can be met, right? Like we can get a doctor. We can get more honest polls, right? So I do think, I don't want to be, you can never predict, right? And unfortunately, I mean, this is the thing. There's two Bidens, Joe Biden the party functionary. You know, I'm loyal to the party. I'll do what the party wants. If Pelosi, Schumer, Obama say this, I got to do it. But there's also Joe Biden, who like imagines himself as being the stereotypical stubborn Irishman, with the chip on the shoulder, and like, I'm the boy from Scranton that they always underestimated, and I'll show these hoity-toity hi-hats, like I can beat them. So like the real question to me is like, which Joe Biden wins, right? Like the political realist who realizes he needs the party to win, or the guy who has these fantasies that you knock me down and I get up. Which, if you think about it, like even if you think that's true, and it's not really true in Biden's case, he's been knocked down and he stayed knocked down for a while. Like he's run for president a couple of times and lost, right? But even if you accept that mythology, like that's no prediction that it's going to work this time. Well, like it's just a personal myth.
I want to just add to like this to the second column of the duality of Biden. There was a piece by Ryan Grimm about 10 days ago, which I had missed up until like a couple of days ago, where he interviewed this guy, Dimitri Melhorn, who is, I guess, part of the Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn, like that money, big money circuit. And Melhorn brought up something that was really interesting in my mind, is that you've got Biden, the Obama, the Democratic establishment comes to him in 2016 and says, no, you can't run. Hillary's going to run. You can't do it. And you're not going to win in this instance. So we're going to go with Hillary. And then he sees that they were all wrong. Yeah. And the crap show that we get. I mean, it'd be a very different situation right now had Biden been president in 2016. And then in 2020, these people came to him and said, you can't win. Yeah, you can't actually make it. And of course, he does end up winning. Well, no, okay. I grant you 2016. I think that Joe Biden has I know where you're going with 2020. I'm talking at the beginning of the race, because I think that he, ended up like sort of boxing out maybe any other person who could have been the Biden in that race, because ultimately those same people delivered him the nomination against Bernie Sanders.
Exactly. 2016, I think Biden has a really legitimate complaint. They should have let him run. He could have beaten Trump in that case. He would have interestingly triangulated between Bernie and Hillary and, got components of both positions. But in 2020, like he was actually floundering. Like let's remember those first three primaries. He was not doing well. He was only saved by that Democratic establishment that he's putting down now.
You might call them elites.
Well,
you might call them elites.
And actually, there's a very interesting interview with a centrist. It's interesting. Like now, we can all tell the truth. This
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith gave this interview. He basically admitted the truth that we all know, which is that Bernie was the presumptive nominee. He was on track to winning. They decided it can't be Bernie. They consolidated around Biden. They moved by hook and by crook to get everyone else out of the race and to bolster, prop up this man. So I think in both cases, both 2016, 2020, the establishment interfered in ways that were like, in the long run, not great for the party. But and I think Biden, like he doesn't mention that, but he at some level, he knows it's true. He knows it was Obama that got him that nomination.
Well, yes. No, I don't think it's a question of him resenting, at least in the way this telling is. It's more about trusting his own gut. You know what I mean? And of course, this guy's gut always tells him, I'm the one. I am the one who can do it.
Well, he's been running for president since the 1970s. I mean,
I have seen at least two of his, I saw the two, believe me, I thought in 2020, I'm like, I've seen this guy just do nothing but lose, and he's going to lose again.
But that's the fundamental problem with the campaign is it's I, and that's what he says when he goes and does these media appearances. I'm the guy, I can do this, look at my record, backwards facing. And what last night showed with the RNC is that Trump's debate performance was horrible. It just they can't draw that contrast because Biden's was catastrophic. And it's not about the policies. That's the thing that I just have such a fundamental disagreement with AOC and Bernie on. The policies are really good. It's just the fact that people rightly think he cannot serve for another 4 years. And you can't make that case to the public without coming off like massive liars. That's the big problem that the Biden campaign has.
Yeah, go into your take on AOC and the progressives. Like, what are they doing from your perspective? Did you happen to see her Instagram? Stream?
I did that.
Okay, so integrate that now, because there adds a little bit of knowledge to their motivation.
Sure. So my basic analysis all along was that the progressives, the left of the congressional left, has a right analysis that it's not their job to get rid of Biden. That if they came out against Biden, this would be consolidate support for Biden among centrists. And in fact, I think, as we just talked about, the centrists created this monster. It's their job to get rid of it, right? And if they did go against Biden, this would always be used against them, that they were disloyal to a Democratic leader. Given that situation, why not?
And let me just emphasize that point. That's what the Latimer ran against Jamal Bowman on.
Exactly.
For all the other talk, the ads that were really the most sort of like saturated were Jamal Bowman voted against Biden's plan A, B, C, D.
Yeah. And the squad knows it too. Cori Bush said 100% of the calls she's getting from her constituents are for Biden to drop out, but she's not saying that. She's walking that tightrope because she doesn't want that used against her in a primary race.
Exactly. So politically, it makes a lot of sense for them to do what they basically did, which is use this moment to leverage off of Biden and get him. And then I think it's actually politically important, and people don't understand that. But to have a Democratic president say, we're going to have national rent control. I'm president. To have Biden say, we're going to do Supreme Court reform and ethics in Supreme Court, that's big, and that's a marker, and this will affect the party's politics going on. So politically, I think it makes a lot of sense. But having said that, the AOC's other comments, she offers these political explanations. I think some of them are fair enough. I think she's right that the centrists who are and the donor class that are coming out against this, they don't want Kamala Harris. They want, you have people like Matt Iglesias, who's I think the mouthpiece for the big money people, saying, well, why don't we have Pete Buttigieg and Torres? Can you imagine that thing? I think she's right to be wary of the donor class interference of but I don't think that I think she's overestimating their power. I think if Joe Biden drops out and says very strongly, I'm dropping out, I release my delegates, but I've always had faith in Kamala Harris. She's my I endorse her, she would win, and there'd be no contest, right? No one would, I think, even challenge her in those circumstances. So, and I think that AOC's worries, some of them are legitimate, but she's kind of, she's doing a little bit of motivated reasoning of trying to justify this decision, which she knows is unpopular with among a lot of her constituents and a lot of her supporters of why are you propping up Biden? But she. I think,
but that's what I don't like about it, Jeet, right? I don't like making that case when you know that 2/3 of Democrats want him to step aside. Yeah. Why is she aggressively making a case for him? The policy.
Well, I don't think she. I don't know how aggressive I would characterize.
An hour Instagram live defending his decision to stay in the race. Basically,
that's not what that was.
It was in part right.
She was saying quite a bit that she didn't know. I think the thing that I took away from that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big thing. She herself, and she's one of Biden's strongest supporters in the party right now, was basically opening the door for him exiting, right? Saying,
without a doubt.
Or I guess talking about the problems.
I think what I took from that was she also said a couple of times, and I think she's dancing around this, and I can understand why she is. She says, I think people underestimate Biden's strength with certain constituencies, which to me is also because she says it has to be Harris. There's no other way for it to happen except for Harris. Both, I think, from a perspective from a perfectly pragmatic perspective, which I happen to agree with, and maybe also as a defense against the sort of vagaries of the donor class that are coming in. But I think also in that critique is something unsaid. I think she was she was laying out a lot of stuff there. But when she talks about people underestimating and not understanding Joe Biden's support in certain particular areas, she mentioned older people. I think what the flip side of that coin is, there is a concern, I believe, which I don't think is an illegitimate concern, particularly in this era, that a black woman may have political liabilities that, and certainly, I think there's a strong case that Hillary Clinton was sui generis and that perhaps a different woman like, Elizabeth Warren could have won in 2016. But we shouldn't kid ourselves. The fear that Kamala Harris, who is not necessarily a stellar politician, that the fear that there's going to be swing voters, to the extent that those people exist, are going to be reluctant to vote for a black woman. There's certainly, I don't think that's completely unfounded. It's also something that I would be surprised if AOC is going to articulate that as a woman of color herself.
Sure. But I would also say, there's a couple of things. I think once you have Dobbs' decision and abortion on the issue, the value of a woman as being the valiance changes a lot. The second thing is if we were going back last fall and Biden dropped out, would Harris be my candidate? I think she has some real problems, but the choice now is really between Biden and Harris, and Biden cannot. He has no linguistic competence. He is the fundamental trait of being able to form syntactically coherent sentences. He can't do that, and that's an important quality to have if you're running for president. And she has that in spades. I've been listening to her speeches lately. I think she can do a real barn burner.
She's definitely improved.
Yeah, she can do real barn burners, and and also all the polling that we now have says in the swing states, she's polling better than Biden, especially if you have to be concerned about American racism and sexism, Kamala and a cracker makes sense, right? Let's have Kamala and a white Southern guy. Am I allowed to say that? Am I going to get in trouble with this, Sam?
Hate speech.
Well, Emma said
Jeet.
Bashir, right?
I think
Bashir or Cooper.
But it's Bashir or Cooper, I feel like. And if they're gonna, if they're that concerned about her being a black woman, which I find to be a self-defeating argument, I think the country's ready. I do.
I think so too. But also all the polling shows, if it's her and a white guy, it's much better than Biden Harris right now. So
pick generic white guy.
Right. And I will also say, I don't think, particularly with 3.5 months left in the campaign, the Republicans do not have the time to develop a nuanced way of saying that she is a black woman and we're not going to have that. They're going to go right into DEI territory, and people are going to go, whoa, wait a second.
Oh, yeah. That's actually the underrated thing. They will actually go very racist. And that will polar, and then I think Democrats are legitimately losing black votes, and this could actually change that very quickly. And also, the thing is, both Trump plus Vance, we didn't talk about this with Vance. That guy has a lot of weird gender politics. I think that
weird gender politics. Well, he's coming from that like Tucker Carlson, patriarchy. This is trad dad shit or whatever they're calling it.
He's constantly talking about how cat women, these single women who aren't having children are ruling America and ruining America. And I gotta say, if they unleash that stuff, the Democrats will win, because the Republicans are not capable of being normal. They will attack. They'll come against Taylor Swift and say and they will totally lose the millions of Americans who think a woman can do something other than get married and have 10 kids.
So first of all, his wife, Kamala Harris, is also half Indian, and it'll be interesting to see if JD Vance can navigate that racism with his wife being also, I believe she's Indian, if I'm I don't.
South Asian,
And also, either way, she clerked for Kavanaugh and Roberts. how is he going to get in a bind in terms of talking about career women and staying in the home? And I dare them to bring up the fact that Kamala Harris has made the choice not to have children. I want them to bring that up because that's a very easy way for her to talk. I don't know if it was a choice or if she was unable to do so, but still, if they're gonna go in that misogynist route, it's the easiest way to bring up reproductive rights and women's health care and how personal it is. I think there's a lot of trap doors with her as the candidate. That's my feeling. Yeah.
We should also add that the negatives that are the sort of like the ones that I think people are most nervous about, if they're nervous about Harris in that respect, because I get texts like, but doesn't it need to be a white guy type of thing? Those are already sort of like front and center. When we look at her polling right now, and frankly, this is true of all the other people that Biden's polling is put against, they're not candidates. Like they haven't been campaigning for however many months. Like presumably if her negatives are completely, identity based, she only has an upside because it's not like people are going to find out, wait a second, I didn't realize that she was a woman, of color. I didn't know that until
and
now.
she can drive turnout. Like the thing about what the RNC made super clear to me last night is, like Hillary when she was the candidate in 2016, there's nothing. No, you can't rebrand Trump as kindly grandfather. Everyone already has opinions about Donald Trump. Biden, he's too old. That's the opinion, and it's not changing. We live in a very different media environment where we're so saturated and so connected all the time. Narratives get locked in way earlier in election cycles now. Kamala Harris is an opportunity disguised as a crisis, in my view, because people don't know enough about her, and then she can excite people by connecting her identity to the issues. That's the opportunity I think that's in front of us, but is Biden not going to endorse her? That's maybe the number one thing that came out of the AOC stuff for me was she may have fears that, I don't know, Biden's not interested in endorsing Kamala Harris, which would be, I think, a disaster. I don't know what you think about that, Jeet.
Well, I mean, like I said, there's two Bidens. There's the scrappy little guy from Scranton who is too full of himself and thinks he's essential. But there's the party functionary and who kind of knows that any future he has. And I thought it was interesting. One of the donors said, if he doesn't do the right thing, there's never going to be a Biden presidential library. There will be no Biden legacy. Yeah. I think that he has to realize, and no one's going to look after the Biden family. Ever again. So I think that Biden on some gut level realizes his whole identity is with the party, and he's a party player.
I think Harris is. I mean, if he's worried about his legacy, he's got to promote his own vice president. Otherwise, he looks like, wait, did you make a mistake when you picked her as your vice president? I mean, she is where she's at because of him, and so. I mean, but with that said, Jen O'Malley Dillon was on Morning Joe today and said he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, but But I mean,
Chuck Todd said there could be a delegate revolt if that's the case. I saw yesterday.
Yeah.
So we can do this the hard way, or you can do this the easy way.
Well, the thing is that the party, I mean, Biden has this core group of inner circle, which is very small. There's basically his family and a few Delaware cronies that he's known for 50 years. Whether those people can I have to believe that Pelosi, Obama, Schumer, and Jeffries have a little bit more clout than, the people Biden plays poker with in Delaware.
I just heard that the First Lady has canceled a trip to Michigan, and Kamala Harris is heading to Wisconsin. So,
well, actually, there's one good thing is, I mean, there's a reporting now that the family is kind of also at the acceptance stage. I mean, I think the family is really the last barrier, and whatever deal they have to make. Does that mean
that Hunter's gotten is going to get the pardon in December?
Welcome to the next ambassador to Colombia. Under the Harris administration, Hunter Biden.
Jeet here, Always a pleasure. We will link to your pieces on all of these questions and more. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Always great to be on.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.